Hi folks, I want to talk with you for a few moments about community of inquiry, and I especially want to focus on the aspect of social presence. It's important for you to understand why this course is designed as it is, and why this is a cohort experience, and why I believe your contribution is so vitally important. There's a whole website devoted to the idea of community of inquiry that you can look at later if you're interested. There are numerous papers that have been written about it that you can read and explore, but right now, we're going to look at this seminal paper that was written by Garrison, Anderson, and Archer so we can highlight some of the things I think are really important. I do encourage you to download and read this paper in its entirety, but here are some particularly relevant highlights. Some things that really stand out to me and things which might be helpful and important to you. When I first looked at this model, I perceived it fairly simplistically as three different interaction spaces, where I perceived cognitive presence to be interaction between you, the student, and the course content. I perceive teaching presence to be the interaction between me, the instructor, and you as a student. And I perceive social presence to be the social interactions between you and other students. However, when I read the model more carefully, I could see it was much more sophisticated than that. I could see that these three different areas are very intertwined and not static spaces, but rather these spaces are process-driven. So I want to take a moment and sort of focus on that and point out some of those things to you. If we take a moment to consider cognitive presence, we're talking about critical thinking. And by critical thinking, we're talking about an iterative process where you're exploring and coming to some final conclusions and thoughts, sharing them with others for their comments and feedback, and then the cycle begins again. Cognitive presence, or critical thinking here, is thus an iterative process. The authors created this model to illustrate this idea. These processes begin with some sort of triggering event. It may be some content I ask you to consider. It may be a question I ask you. It may happen in a conversation with one of your peers. You may come to a disagreement with one of your peers, or perhaps someone will contribute something that is, from a perspective, unfamiliar to you. Any of these events and more may cause you to explore further, to begin to integrate new knowledge, to come to and share some new resolution or conclusions. Depending upon how satisfying that process is, you may move on to the next unit, or you may reconsider and begin to iterate through the cycle again. Thus, the iterative, multi-phased nature of this. If we understand that as the cognitive presence portion, then how does the social presence portion fit in? I want to take a moment to highlight this aspect as it's particularly important in our context. Social presence is the opposite of downloading material. Social presence is really about having a conversation, and I want you to understand that it isn't about me lecturing you. That's not a conversation. It's really about each of us participating in an exchange of ideas, a true collaborative conversation among our cohort. Lastly, we need to look at some compensating strategies to support our primarily text-based medium of exchange. We don't have all the visual assets, facial expressions, and nonverbal cues that a face-to-face environment has. We need to find a way to compensate so that the group finds a way to see each of us as the complicated individuals we are. We're going to start doing that by introducing ourselves to the group, but ultimately, we can only really come to significant learning outcomes if we really fully engage in the social presence process. So that's the basis of this course. That's why it's designed to be a cohort experience. That is why your participation within the social aspects are so important. I encourage you now to download and read this article in its entirety.